How's it going, everybody? There was a question posted to me on Facebook that, yes, I am on Facebook. Unfortunately, I did fall victim to the social media onslaught. I'm just making that sound worse than it really is. It actually benefits me. I'm able to ask questions to people if I have questions. So, anywho, the question was, with .1q trunking, like, okay, .1q trunking, where does the tag come into play? And I'm like, oh, simple. The tag comes into play right here. As right now, I've got this switch configured as with, it timed out obviously by now. But I have this switch right here configured with the voice VLAN to here, and then beyond here it's data VLAN. What does that mean? Well, as incoming packets, frames I should say, come in here, they do their thing, and if it doesn't match something on here, or the MAC address doesn't match an entry in the CAM table on this switch, it needs to send it somewhere else. So this switch will know about this guy, so it'll know it's not something on its local CAM table, it'll send it up here. Well, this is where tagging comes into play. These are actually, by other vendors, these are called tag links, not trunk links. So what ends up happening is if it needs to go up here, it's tagged VLAN 10 traffic. So if my data traffic is VLAN 10 and my voice traffic is VLAN 20, it is tagged VLAN 10 traffic coming up here. And it may need to go out to another computer that is on the same VLAN, but on another switch. So then it'll go across the wire to this switch up here. Well, what if it's not going to another VLAN? Not a VLAN that we even have. Well, no problem. Put an 1841 on here, go over here, figure this to this, fast Ethernet /0/2. So what ends up happening is this guy in here is a trunk link, this is a trunk link, and these are trunk links. So anything in between two intermediary devices are trunk links. Depending on the type of device, you may have to do a straight through with not light devices, or a crossover cable if they are light devices. Anyway, as data comes in here, it is in the correct VLAN. So what ends up happening is as soon as it hits the trunk link, it is tagged. The tag associates it with a certain VLAN, and it comes up here, says, oh, okay, well, it's not something that's dedicated to this guy. You know, if it's not, if it's VLAN 20 traffic, I'm sorry, VLAN 10 traffic, but it's got to go to VLAN 30, so we'll add a device over here. Well, let's stick this guy up here, and we'll give it to there. So if it's this guy is destined to talk to this guy, but they're on two different VLANs, this guy comes in here, hits this switch, the switch adds a VLAN 10 tag to it, and it puts a little 4-byte shim in there. That 4-byte shim, well, tag, gets forwarded all the way up here to this guy. This guy right here is routing for VLANs 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So it comes in here, receives the traffic, and says, oh, well, VLAN 30 is directly connected to me, because it's on I can see it. I'm the default gateway for it. So it sends it back down here, but it's tagged with VLAN 30. So it comes down here, all the way down here, and it's got the destination IP address of this guy, and it's sourced from here. So as traffic leaves the router, destined from here, if you were to do a show ARP on the router would see it because it's connected. It's just something that's on. Anytime you are using a router as a default gateway and you advertise a subnet on that IP address, it's going to learn all the MAC addresses associated with that subnet. So it will forward packets, well, frames at this point, because it goes from layer 3 to layer 2, the IP address of this guy right here and the MAC address of this guy right here. So it'll come out here, it'll shoot it all the way down here, it'll tag it VLAN 30 across the wire, across the trunk link. This guy gets it, says, okay, well, it's not this in front of MAC address on my CAM table, so it'll shoot it down here. And then same thing with here. And it doesn't match anything on this guy's CAM table, but it says it does match somebody a MAC address that I know about. So it sends it to this guy here, he receives it. The only time tagging occurs is between this switch and this switch. The switch doesn't actually do anything with it. When it's transiting, it just forwards it. It says, okay, well, it's not a MAC address that's attached to me, but it's got the IP address of up here. So it knows in order to get from point A to point B, it says, okay, the IP address is here, but my destination MAC address will be the router's fast Ethernet interface. And then once the fast Ethernet interface gets a hold of it, reroutes the traffic to here, the IP address turns from the IP and MAC address changes from the router's fast Ethernet interface, the IP and MAC address, down to the PC1's IP address and MAC address. So as the frame comes in here, it knows where it's got to go, and it knows the MAC address. If the MAC address doesn't match something that was learned on this switch or learned on this switch, but dynamically learned from another switch, does that make sense? It keeps forwarding it. If it's locally learned, it means it's directly connected. If it's dynamically learned, another switch sends its ARP table and says, okay, well, hey, this is what I know about. Does that make sense? So it'll forward the traffic on until it hits where it's got to go. You may get a destination unreachable, which means it doesn't know how to get there. So pretty uncommon. But I wanted to show you how the IP phone works, because you have power, then you have RS-232, which is the old-fashioned phone line, and then you have the 10100 switch. This is what you connect the switch port, this to this. When it comes from the switch to the phone, that's where it goes, and then from the phone to the computer. So the computer's Ethernet cable connects here, and then this guy's the Ethernet cable connects from here to the switch. You don't have to worry about crossover cables or anything like that. The switch ports in here are smart enough to know crossover. They will do its own auto media detection inverse crossover, something to that effect. What it does is it just says, okay, well, I need to change my pinout from crossover at a certain pin range to a straight through, so then it knows. Now, if you're running between a switch, directly from a switch to an end device, you're going to need a straight through cable. If you're going from crossover or from switch to switch, you'll need a crossover cable. But because of the fact that this is a switch port and this is a switch port, it'll be like, okay, well, typically you need a crossover cable because this is acting as a switch port. But because there's auto MDICs involved, you don't have to. So for those of you that are concerned about that, you don't have to worry about it. Typically, you're going to run switch port to patch panel, and then you're going to have connections from the switch ports. These guys will connect from here to a patch panel, and they'll be punched down, and then the patch panel will be connected. Well, the actual run to the raceway or the junction box in the cube or the room that you're trying to drop internet into, that's where that'll happen. So it'll go switch to patch panel to Ethernet run, whether it's going through the ceiling, under the floor, along the wall, whatever the case may be, to where it's got to go, and then that'll run a cable to the junction point on the wall. And then the wall will terminate, and then that's when you plug your computer into that. So it's just a bunch of interconnections, and the nice thing about that is on the 2960 I'm going to do enable. I'm going to do TDR. I don't know if this is going to work, but cable, unorganized command. You can do TDR cable dash diagnostics question mark. It doesn't recognize the term. In my 3550, I don't think I have a device that'll do it either. But if you do this and you type in fast 0/2 and hit enter, what it'll do is if you think that there's let's say for instance, no matter what you do at the end device, it doesn't fix it. It doesn't get internet, doesn't do anything like that. You can do a cable test, and what it'll do is it'll test all 4 pairs of wires from the switch port down to where it terminates, whether it's 60 meters, 80 meters, 90 meters, whatever the case may be. It'll do a cable test. It'll test all the pairs all the way down the line, and if it detects an error, it'll tell you. And now it's pretty close. I mean, you might see 57 meters on one pair, 58 meters on another, 59 meters on another, 57 on one, and then you see like a 32. You know that there's an error somewhere in the cable. There's a cable error. So it's a physical, it's layer 1 problem at that point. So then you may have to go figure it out. Now, it does not know how to disseminate between patch panel It does not know how to disseminate between raceway junction points where you plug your computer in and you have another 15 feet of cable to your computer. It doesn't know how to disseminate any of that. What it does do is it takes that information and it gives you your outputs and says, okay, this is what it came back with, this is what's good. Then it might say open, meaning that there could be a bad connection somewhere. So that'll help you determine where the problem may sit, and then you can determine at that point if it's really close to where it's got to be. Then you may think it's something along the lines of a raceway issue or something like that. So just a thought for those of you that are you don't want to sit there and call somebody out to run the cable. You can do a cable test and go that route. Now, I don't know if this is gonna yeah, I mean you could theoretically trace it, but the best thing to do, terminal history question mark. Oh, sweet. Learn something new every day. Oh, one other side note, show line. Oh, doesn't like that command. Show logging. That's it, huh? Question mark? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's not a lot of show commands you can do. Oh, so show sessions. Question mark. You can see who's telnetted into the show users, I believe, too, is another show users. Right now, I'm consoled into it, is what the way it looks like. So, as you can see, it's consoled. That's just a couple of things you can do for local diagnostics to see what's going on. The one thing that you see right here, show tech support. I'm just going to do it just so you guys can see tech. Question mark. What show tech support will do is it'll show you everything on your device. It's basically shows you the running configuration. It shows you all the interface statuses, and it will keep going and going and going until it stops. So it'll show you all of the interfaces, and it'll keep going and going and going and going. And why is it showing? That's just weird. Oh, I see why. Because it's receiving broadcasts on their half duplex. So, yeah, it's just receiving broadcasts by the look of it. Yeah, 96 broadcasts, and this is where this sits. So these are outputs. So it's receiving broadcasts on VLAN 1. So, yeah, that's it. I hope this has been informative for you, and thank you for viewing.